Hi guys, and welcome to the styling element of your online eyelash extension training course. This is where it gets juicy. I mean, there's a lot to cover and there's a lot to take in, which is why I think it's just going to be brilliant having this online. So you just have this to access to whenever you need a little bit of education, a little bit of theory around styling. So there's a few elements we're going to go over, including visual styling, face shape, lash curls direction, eye shapes, lash mapping, layering, length, and transition. So I've just skipped a little page there, but it just basically talks about who we are. And then we move on to the importance of styling. So you have this manual to have a read through. I'm not going to read through everything for you, but I am going to go through it a little bit and explain for you. I mean, the top sentence here is, in the words of Vicky Rugg, when I think about styling, I think of two words: lash magic. Vicky Rugg no longer works within the industry, but when I was doing lashes, so I trained in 2014, so 11 years ago now, she was a huge influence and kind of a leader in the industry, and she taught about creating magic with styling. And you can really create magic when styling. You can give the illusion that someone's face looks different by the way we map our clients' eyes. So just to give you an example, in this little image here, we have my lovely friend Emma, who's also a student of mine, and Emma has slightly uneven eyes. So if you can see, as looking at the picture, her left eye sits ever so slightly higher up. So what I have done in this case is two separate lash maps to literally balance. So the eye that sits lower, I've actually done longer eyelash extensions than the other eye to create balance, to give the illusion of symmetry. So for example, let's say a client has close set eyes, which means their eyes sit closer to their face. We can put length to the eyelashes towards the outers and kind of fan them out. I'm going to talk about direction a little bit later, which gives the illusion that their eyes sit further apart because you're not drawn to the inner part of the eye. It really is clever, and this is everything I'm going to break down in this manual for you. Visual styling. Visual styling is so important. So when I think of visual styling, I think a client walks through my door, I look at their face and I'm like, yes, she needs length. Nope, she can't handle length. She's got wide set eyes. I'm going to bring that length in and give the illusion that her eyes are closer together. Visual styling is when you look at your client and you can see differences that you can potentially, what's the word I'm looking for? Correct, in terms of creating symmetry or an illusion of symmetry. So when I'm looking at visual styling, the first thing that I look at, and I am going to break this manual down in sections, it's not going to be one long video, so don't worry too much. Spacing between the eyebrows and the eyelashes is the first thing I always look at when I am doing a client's consultation. So first point of visual styling, space between the brows. And what that means is the space between where your eyelid is and the brows. And why that's important is because that single element of styling can determine the length you are going to give your client. So for example, we've got the lovely Ellie here, who is also a very good friend and student. It's really lovely how I've managed to kind of just build relationships from everyone that's trained with me. And you know what? This is something that you will be able to do going forward. It really is the most incredible career. So Ellie here, beautiful Ellie, has quite a large space between her eyelid and her eyebrows. So, I mean, I don't know how much you know about eyelash extensions at this point in the course, but what I would say to you without reading the manual is have a little guess at what length eyelash extensions Ellie has on if you haven't looked at the wording. I mean, I teach this manual a lot and some clients will say, oh, they look quite short, maybe a 9, maybe a 10. She is actually wearing a 13 length in eyelash extensions, not across the whole eye, because I tend to do the main length above the iris, which is the coloured part of the eye. So we always start low and then build our length and come back down in length. But Ellie is actually wearing a 13. And that is because Ellie has a big space between her eye and her eyebrows. So she needs length. I always think, right, someone's got a big space, they need length. If they want length, obviously. If they come in and they've got not very much space, which I'm going to cover in a second, then they can't handle the length. Ellie doesn't have the longest natural eyelashes. So what you would assume is that Ellie would come into the salon, come on the bed. She needs a big amount of length, but her naturals aren't too long. That's fine. We can absolutely still add length. What we would need to do though, if we're adding length to bridge that gap, is drop down in weight just to make sure we are always taking the client's natural eyelash safety and health into consideration. That is so important. My point here is look at the spacing. If they have big spacing, they're going to need some length. Can they handle length? Are their natural lashes strong enough to handle length? And if they are quite fine, or they are quite weak, or they are quite short, we can absolutely give length, excuse me, but we are going to need to drop down in weight. So that's just a little bit of an introduction and a start to the Illusion Manual in terms of visual styling. Next, we are going to look a little bit more into visual styling in terms of smaller space, but I'm going to cut this one here because we're at 6 minutes, and I know sometimes if you record for too long at any one time, you can kind of stop taking the information in. So I'll be back in the next video.